Great. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. We appreciate you being here, as well as the many people who came out last Thursday to join us in person for the same meeting. Uh, just as you just heard, the meeting tonight is being recorded. It will be posted onto the NVCOG YouTube page, as well as linked onto the project page on the NVCOG website. And so just to make sure everyone is aware of that. My name is Rich Donovan. I am the Director of Transportation Planning here for the Naugatuck+Valley Council of Governments. And we're excited to be working with the town of Wolcott on this project. I do want to share just up front, so there's no surprises later on. We are in the earlier stages of this project, and so we're not going to be sharing the routing tonight because we don't know what it is yet, but we're hoping to gather some feedback from the attendees this evening, as well as those who attended the meeting last Thursday, as we put together those routes and those options and move forward. And so if I can change the slide on my computer somehow, there we go. Just to run through what we're going to cover this evening, we're going to do a real quick round of introductions and our staff here at the NVCOG, as well as who we are as an agency. We'll talk briefly about the study, the background, goals, and objectives that we've laid out so far. We will touch briefly upon the existing conditions, which I'm sure is anyone who lives in town has a pretty good sense for some of the challenges we're going to face with this. We'll go through the upcoming schedule for public engagement. And then really the important part of tonight's meeting, the true crux of this engagement, is to discuss design elements and get a sense for feedback from you, from those in the community who are attending, what you would like to see as we move forward with the route here. We will also share at the end some contact information. We are always happy to answer questions or provide additional information. We'll also make sure that a link is posted in the chat to this meeting to the study page on the NVCOG website, which will be regularly updated as we move the study forward. And so just very briefly, again, my name is Rich Donovan. I lead our transportation planning program here. And I'm fortunate this evening to be joined here in the room at our NVCOG offices by Tayo Alale, who is a member of our transportation planning staff, by Desiree Blanchard, who is our communications and community engagement coordinator. And we are joined online by Christine O'Neill, who is a member of our environmental planning staff, as well as a resident of Wolcott and an avid user of the existing trail out there with her dog. And so just a very brief introduction to us. We are a voluntary association of 19 towns here in the kind of west central region of Connecticut, surrounded mostly around the city of Waterbury. We serve two roles in this capacity. We are the state designated regional planning organization. And so in that capacity, we offer support and technical assistance to our member towns, as well as address some of the regional needs that in most states are covered by counties or similar organizations. We are also the federally designated metropolitan planning organization. And so in this role, we are responsible for programming and planning the federal transportation program. All of our decisions are made by the NVCOG board, which is the chief elected official of each town that we represent. And so the mayor in Wolcott sits on our board and is one of our 19 voting members. And so in this capacity, you know, our board really serves as the local representation to the state and federal agencies that handle transportation planning, as well as on the planning side at the state level. And so we are broken up into several divisions, including GIS and mapping. We have a land use team, a brownfields and remediation team. Of course, we have our transportation planning team, our environmental planning team, and we also provide support on the emergency management planning side. If you are familiar with us, then you have hopefully seen our website before. If you are not, then we encourage you to visit nvcogct.gov or nvcogct.gov. Our website is regularly maintained by our communication staff with updates on all of our ongoing projects and initiatives, as well as our meeting schedules and all kinds of other public information. In the bottom left corner, we do have this accessibility widget, which provides lots of options to make the page easier to use. And in the top right corner, you'll see circled in red, there's a button called Our Towns. That if you click on that, you'll see the town seal for all 19 of our member communities. And if you click on any one of the towns individually, you'll see the projects and plans that influence that town. You'll also see within that same red circle where it says English, the page does auto translate into a whole variety of languages, as well as we are happy to provide language assistance upon a phone call to our office. All right, so that's who we are. We do want to get into now what is the study? Why are we here this evening? And so the town applied into the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection's Recreational Trails Program for a kind of a series of activities across town. One of those items that was awarded was this, an initial routing study to look at the possibility of and potential paths to connect the Woodtick Recreation Area and the existing trail that surrounds the Scovill Reservoir to Peterson Park and the Naugatuck Trail in the north. Obviously, it's a challenging section, and so that's why this first routing stage is being done. This is really the initial planning. Once we finish our report, based on community feedback, based on kind of our high level overview of land uses and existing infrastructure, the town will then have the opportunity to go back to programs like the Deep Rec Trails program to find money to do design and then ultimately to construct whatever the final outcome of that is going to be. And so here at this study, at this stage, we're hoping to identify really the community preferences, focusing heavily on safety considerations and ideally and ultimately the potential routes to connect these two incredible environmental assets. And the final deliverables here from our study, we will have that design guidance based on the feedback from this meeting, the meeting we held last Thursday, as well as any feedback we receive in between. We will highlight at least one or at least a preferred route that we think has the best likelihood of being both economical and feasible while minimizing impacts to both trail users and surrounding land uses. We'll also identify alternate routes. And so we'll look at all of the possible ways to make this connection to ensure that there's the highest likelihood that something can move forward. We're going to follow up these meetings with a full community engagement report. Not only is this a good way for town staff to see what it is that community members have expressed interest in, but also it's helpful when the town goes to apply for future grants to demonstrate that this is something that is not just an administrative level, but truly a community-driven and engaged process. And then finally, one of the advantages for us as the councils of government doing this is that we are here after the fact. And so when this study is done, we will be around to provide assistance with an application for design and future steps. Ideally, right, we are all part of this community. We all care quite deeply about these communities. And so we want to see this trail done just as much as anybody else. And so we're going to be here kind of for the long term to help make sure that whatever we come up with in this study gets moved forward. And so truly, what is it we want to accomplish with this, right? What are ultimately our goals? Excuse me. Most importantly, we want to expand recreational opportunities within the town. We know that both Peterson Park and the Woodtick Recreation Area are incredible natural assets. They're incredible recreational assets. And through the Blue Blaze Naugatuck Trail provide access to miles of high quality hiking. And so we want to help connect these two areas, make sure that there's a safe way to get between them, not only for those who cannot drive, but for those who choose not to. We want to protect access to the Mad River as much as we can for current and future generations. It's truly an incredible environmental asset, an incredible natural asset. And so the more we can provide access to that for people, the better. And to that same point, we're very fortunate here in kind of West Central Connecticut and the Naugatuck+Valley to have a phenomenal natural environment. And so the more we can connect with that environment, both in a physical way, but also in a sense of pride and a sense of appreciation and stewardship for the place that we call home, the better off we will be. And finally, we know that trail users tend to be actively engaged with their local economies. And so we want to ensure that any new trail that gets put in place is done in a way that helps connect it to existing local businesses and potential future local businesses and help support that economic development activity within town. So just a brief overview of the timeline. You'll see we began work on this study back right around the middle of July. We first published the website for this on the NVCOG website at the beginning of August. We've completed quite a bit of work on this project so far. we have our first public meetings now happening here in the middle of October. And we intend by the end of this month to publish to the NVCOG website and share with the town a draft of an existing conditions profile. That draft will be open for public comment for at least 30 days from the time we publish it, but we'll be accepting comments on it through the end of the study at the end of the year. As we get through October, we're going to begin work on some preliminary concepts for routing, and we aim to have that report finished by the end of November. And finally, as we get into December, we will hold another public meeting in early December to highlight some of those route options that we talk about, to provide another opportunity for residents and users of the trail network in town to provide feedback before we deliver our final materials, which will include our public engagement summary and report, the existing conditions profile, the report of existing concepts, of preliminary concepts, both preferred and alternate, and then the final report that details not only all of that information, but includes a prioritized and actionable next steps plan for the town to act on. This same graphic is on the project page on the NVCOG website and has been updated pretty regularly, just about once a month, and we will continue to do so. And finally, again, just before we get to a final report, we want to talk briefly about what other opportunities there will be for public engagement. So that first bullet point, an in-person design charrette, was completed last week. That was on Thursday. The virtual version of the in-person meeting is this meeting right now. And so again, we appreciate you for being here, because this is truly how we build a product that matches the desires of the community. All of the public materials, after they are completed, will be posted to the NVCOG website for a minimum of 30 days. And comments that we receive during that period will be included as an appendix on all of those documents, along with responses from our staff. We'll have that third public meeting at the beginning of December. This is going to be kind of I think the one everybody's really interested in. What are the concepts to make this trail happen? So what are both the preferred and alternate routes? What are some of the benefits to each one? What are the challenges that they will face in implementation? And then finally, as I've mentioned many times, we've been maintaining and will continue to maintain the project on the NVCOG website. And we encourage all residents to take a look regularly and let us know as you view that material, if you have questions or comments that you'd like to share. We have my personal email address is up there, as well as info@nvcogct.gov is always a good way to provide feedback to us. And we'll share that again at the end of this meeting. And so with that, we're going to move on from me talking to asking for some feedback. At the public meeting on Thursday, we had these as boards around the room. We asked people to travel around and post sticky notes and stickers on each item. But for this evening, I'm going to ask for attendees, if you see something on the screen here that you really like, please let us know in the chat. If you see something you really don't like, please let us know that in the chat as well. If you have questions, or if you want to share a comment about any of these elements you're seeing on the screen, please go ahead and unmute and ask them at this point. And we'll stay on the screen for just a moment so you have a chance to look through. We know one of the hardest pieces of this is going to be crossing Route 69, which we're going to have to do at least once. And so finding the balance between providing a safe crossing for trail users while maintaining the mobility of residents in vehicles is obviously a real priority here. And so some of these are the kind of the best practices that exist out there right now for trail crossings across busier streets. And so any or all of these elements may make it into a final recommendation. Again, all of these recommendations are going to go into design at a later stage. And so none of this is guaranteed to get built just because we recommend it as part of this study. But we do know that elements like narrowing the road with either something kind of temporary, like you see in the top left picture, or something more permanent, like you see in the top right or bottom left, those curb bump outs, help to give visual clues to drivers that they're about to interact with pedestrians. There's a variety of signage that can be put in place. And so something like the Hawk beacon, or the what are now known as pedestrian hybrid beacons in the bottom right, you'll see here is where the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail crosses Route 68 and 70 in Cheshire. And you'll see rectangular rapid flashing beacons in both the bottom left and top right images. These have become a lot more common across the state, and so drivers are becoming very familiar with them. And so I'll stop talking for a minute if anybody has anything else you'd like to say. And again, feel free to put comments into the chat at any point.
If you want, I can get us started since I'm technically a Wolcott resident and I haven't really given
Please.
my feedback yet. Is that helpful,
Yes,
or should we wait for Mary and Nancy?
No, tell us what you think.
Okay. So, oh, great. Okay, Nancy said something in the chat. Probably the Hawks.
Yeah, so that is a good point, right? Route 68 and 70 in Cheshire is a similarly high volume, higher speed road to the way Route 69 is through Wolcott. And the Hawk, so the Hawks are still pretty uncommon here in Connecticut. I believe there's only 4 of them right now, but they are becoming increasingly common around the country. And places like the District of Columbia have seen great success with installing Hawks at a higher scale and seeing significant safety enhancements from them. Yeah. Christine, if you wanted to share, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I would be fine with any of them. I like the idea of, though, making sure that there's no parking directly in front of or behind the crosswalk, so that nobody needs to like peek out from behind a car, so that drivers can know that they're coming. And also there are I think there's actually only one traffic light between the Peterson Park and Woodtick, or the Woodtick Recreation Area. So, but putting it at an existing stoplight would give a little bit more opportunity for pedestrians to have cars already stopped or integrate the crossing with the existing stoplight. And yeah, the only other thing I'd note is that some of these don't, like at the top left corner, don't appear to have curb cuts for accessibility. So I just mentioned that as well. That's my 2 cents.
Yes, that's a very good call out. Anything new that gets built will get built to meet ADA requirements, and so they will all have modern curb ramps with detectable warning strips, or the little half dome bumps you see at the bottom of ramps. And so to address these couple of comments, these examples all seem to be flat. That is a really good call out. Yeah, these images do show these in mostly flat installations. The bottom left has a little bit of a hill to it. It's kind of coming downhill in the direction of traffic coming toward the picture, up away. But you're right that given the topography of Wolcott, we will definitely have to make sure that signage is highly visible from a longer distance. And I agree. I think we will certainly look at the existing stoplight right near Pat's, because it does put you close to the Mad River. It is a logical point to cross if we can make that work. So that is a really good question. The pedestrian bridge. And so we've talked about both going over and under Route 69. Neither of them are fully off of the table. Of course, the biggest challenge is cost. Those options are very expensive. And so while we will show them, we will show what we expect that they would cost. They tend to be more difficult to execute, but that does not mean that certainly does not mean they're off the table. And given some of the traffic volumes and the potential pedestrian volumes on a new trail, it may make sense to look at that as the real best option going forward. And so please, if you have additional comments or questions, please go ahead and keep adding them to the chat. I'm going to move on to the next slide, but I'm happy to go back to this one if you'd like to see it again. But please don't hesitate to keep adding more comments. Yeah, I think the sentiment across town seems to be that going under the road would be a really good way to go. And so we're going to look at that one really carefully. you know, I think, of course, the safest way to have people cross the street is to not interact with cars. And so if we can make that happen, I think that's a great way to go. Yeah. So the next thing we want to talk about, just very briefly here, is the way the trail would be constructed. And so there's really four options that we've been talking about. This is a pretty straightforward one. You know, so the dirt trail is something similar to the way the Naugatuck Trail exists today. It is just kind of a minimally improved trail. There's the concept to do a stone dust trail, which is what it's like around the Woodtick Recreation Area now. This tends to be a good option for people cycling and walking. You know, it's soft enough and kind of comfortable to walk on, but also it's compacted enough to be safe to ride on. A stone dust pavement hybrid trail is something that's half asphalt and half stone dust. And so it allows people who want to walk or run on the stone dust to do so while still providing pavement for cyclists, especially those using more on-road bikes. And then the last option you'll see here is a full pavement trail. Excuse me. I have like a piece of dust stuck right in my throat. It's driving me crazy. You know, I think we heard quite a bit of feedback on this on Thursday, but I would be curious to know what those online tonight think, if you have a preference for the way you'd like to see this trail built. And Desiree, if you don't mind pulling the chat back up.
Mhm.
And that is a good point. We will absolutely look at the existing culverts and see if there's room alongside where it already crosses underneath of Route 69. So I think you know, just as we take a kind of a last look at this slide here, given the existing conditions of the Naugatuck Trail and the trail around Peterson Park, I think most likely it's going to end up being some kind of a stone dust type trail. You know, we'll recommend, obviously, if we follow the road more closely, it's more likely to be paved. But I think it's a really good call out that we're going to look at what the environmental and the drainage and runoff of each trail option will be. You know, one of the things building a trail alongside a river is that they get wet. And so stone dust and dirt tend to get muddy when they get wet, and they are a lot more challenging to cross in that sense. Yeah, and so that's one of the options we're looking at. And I realize the chat may not show up when we do this recording. And so the comment was, if you follow the road, is it possible to have a dedicated bike lane that is physically separated from the road? And so that is one of the things that we're looking at. You know, generally the state's right of way for state routes is wider than the existing road. And so there is always the potential that we could fit a trail that follows the road's existing footprint without having much impact on property on either side. And so certainly something that we intend to look at. I can say almost definitely one of our recommended, or excuse me, one of our alternate options, perhaps not the recommended, but certainly one of the options will be to follow the road for as long as we can. The next question was, how wide are paths usually? Can you get emergency vehicles? And so this is another question that we tend to look at on a case-by-case basis. The paths can be anywhere between 5 and up, 5 feet wide and wider. Depending on how far separated they are from the road, we will look at access for emergency vehicles and emergency crews. Typically, if we're talking about a shared path, a path that is used by both cyclists and pedestrians, we would want a minimum of 8 feet. And so we will, certainly look to figure out where we can fit that in and how we can best make sure that emergency access is provided to it. Excuse me. And Christine said, I would be very happy with the stone dust trail, though I recommend bordering it with wood or vinyl planks to keep it in place and hopefully wheelchair stroller friendly. It's a really good call out. Anything that we design, we're going to want to make sure is ADA compliant and is accessible to everybody. And it is a very good call that if you just put stone on the ground, the stones go everywhere. And so having some kind of a border to hold the stone in place is of value. And so again, I'm going to move on to the next slide here. If there's additional comments or questions, please feel free to continue to add them into the chat or interrupt me. And so this is the last of the amenity questions we're going to ask. So these are some of the things that are regularly added alongside trails, or along with trails. None of these are necessarily representative of what the elements in Wolcott would look like, especially this picture of a bench. I don't even know who thought that was a good idea, but that is surprisingly large and kind of not functional. But we would love to know which of these elements that you would like to see along the trail, even if they're not necessarily added at the time of initial construction. Yeah, so the comment is to add trash cans. We think those make a lot of sense. You know, there's clearly evidence that the more frequently there are trash cans, the less likely there is to be litter on the ground around the trails. Please feel free as well to mention if there are any of these that you would really not like to see. The comment is, I love all of the suggestions here. One wish I have is for no hostile architecture, benches with bars in the middle, spikes so that pigeons can't land on railings, etc. Nature markings would be very cool. The comment said so cool, but I didn't think I could effectively effectively get that point across. The next comment here says pet waste, trash, nature markings, water would be nice to see. Great. Yeah, and so just as a reminder, we will mention the feedback from this in our final recommendations as it gets to as it gets on to design. You know, these will all get reevaluated, and there will be an opportunity for the community to provide more feedback. But we do love to have this in the kind of the initial step. And so the next comment here says maybe pet waste collection. Do you have any data on how often they get used? How often you have to refill them? We always bring our own bags, so I'm not sure how much they are actually used. This is a really good question. And so it's a very hard one to answer because it is so drastically different based on community and location. You know, so some of the data we have is, and there's a comment here that says it's a great question. I bet Public Works knows from the dog park right next to Peterson Park. We could ask them. We will certainly follow up on that. You know, I can say from personal experience that the pet waste stations along the Riverwalk in Shelton get used all the time. They are typically maintained by the private buildings that own the land around the Riverwalk. But they get refilled as often as every few days, and they get emptied daily because they're so heavily used. We know that the Woodtick Recreation Area is a very popular spot to bring dogs, as well as there's a dog park next to Peterson Park. So I imagine they would be a popular amenity. And so as we approach the end of this meeting, I would like to ask about one other element that we did not get up here onto the board, but we did talk briefly about last Thursday, which is parking. You know, one of the things that we've heard quite a bit is that parking right now along the Woodtick Recreation Area is sometimes challenging, is a little tight. And so I would love to get any feedback from attendees on what your thoughts for parking along the new trail may be. The comment says, I'm surprised to hear that people find the parking challenging. You know, it's an interesting point. We often hear that parking is challenging, even when it's not always so. There are some small lots that fill up. The church and also the reservoir have very large lots. Yeah, and I think that's most of the comments we're hearing are not about the south end where the actual like main parking facility is, where there's quite a bit of room. It's those littler parking areas along the kind of the west end of the trail and across the north end of the trail up near Munson Road. Now we know, of course, there is significant amounts of parking at the south end of the Woodtick area as well as at Peterson Park. And so we certainly don't want to overdo it. And so, this comment says, since we will be passing many businesses along the presumed route, I like the idea of using existing parking lots as much as possible and linking those to the trail. This would also encourage people to support local businesses. And there was a comment to that says, I agree. We also agree. You know, again, one of the main objectives here is to connect trail users with local businesses, and we think this is a great way to do so. All right, well, we again truly appreciate you joining us this evening. We're just excited to see how much engagement has happened on this project already, and we truly love working on these types of projects compared to, you know, writing the federally required reports. These are fun because we get to see the changes in our communities and deliver something that people will truly enjoy. So thank you again for joining us this evening. You'll see here on the screen, we are NVCogCT on all social media platforms. You can visit us at nvcogct.gov or send us an email, info@nvcogct.gov. If you prefer to write us a letter, our address is here on the bottom as well. But please share your feedback at any time. We greatly appreciate all of it. We look forward to publishing the report on this initial set of meetings. And we'll be updating the project webpage with some of this information and some of the next steps very soon. So thank you again, and please don't hesitate to reach out in the future. Just to share for the recording, we did get 2 notes that both say thank you in the chat. And again, thank you all for attending.
Thanks, Rich, Desiree, and Taya for putting this on, and thanks for taking my comments as a Wolcott resident. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, of course. Thank you for
Thank you.
making.
Take care.
All right. Well, we're going to we'll stop the recording here, and thank you again.